Hello everyone, my name is Christopher Liam Rose. I'm an author, mentor, life coach, motivational speaker, evangelist, musician, and activist. In this podcast and audio, we're going to be sharing a message. I've been trying to share the Spiritually Helping Other People podcast and audio to inspire humanity to learn about spiritual change, to inspire humanity to learn about Jesus Christ, Jehovah, and Buddha, and to inspire humanity to help other people learn about no self and selflessness. Now, within this message, we've got a very important message to talk about today. And the message that I'm going to be sharing today is the self is the problem. Now, this is a very deep topic to talk about, and I'm going to try and share as best as I can about this topic, about the self is the problem. Now, right now in life, there's probably millions, thousands, hundreds of people that are going through suffering, pain, and adversity. You know, the suffering, pain, and adversity has been a very difficult thing for people to go through in life. This could be to circumstances, this could be to internal things or external things. But what is a very difficult thing to learn and understand is that the self is the problem. So when we're basically experiencing suffering, pain, and adversities within our lives, it's because we're focused on the self, we're focused on what we've been through, what we've gone through, our challenges, our trauma, our circumstances, our difficulties, our struggles, our pain, our suffering and adversities. So the self becomes the problem. Now, right now in the moment, without people being aware of how important this is, and just you see this basically every single day in life. So many people are selfish and they live a selfish life. I don't think people are aware that they're selfish or live a selfish life. I think it's just part of our civilization as human beings and the way we live. So people will be doing so many different things because of the self. Posting pictures, making videos that are not really constructive or educational, like misbehaving, fooling around, playing games, doing tricks. Now, this is the thing that has to be overcome. This is the thing that has to change. I'm not saying to the listeners, I'm not saying to the viewers that it's going to be an easy journey. To overcome the self and to find no self and selflessness becomes the most important thing in life. And it's so important to go through that spiritual change and on that journey. But when we realize that the self is the problem, our ego, our self-esteem, our suffering, our pain, and adversity has all been created based on the self. So we need to overcome that and get past that and transcend that into the no self and selflessness. So the self is really the problem in life, and this is the reason why our civilization is the way it is because millions, hundreds, thousands of people are living for the self. They're living for themselves, their family, their friends, their companions, their spouse, their husband, their wife, their children. And it's very self-centered. It's always focused on them, what they achieve, what they accomplish, their successes, their riches or their failures, and everything's basically evolved around the self. I, me, my. So when we live life like that, and when we continuously go through life like that, we're only going to be living for the self, which is the problem in life. And if we always live for the self, how you meant to overcome the self and transcend the self to obviously help other people, help humanity, help the animals, help the universe. Now this becomes probably the hardest lesson to learn in life and one of the most important lessons to learn. The self is the problem. Living for yourself is the problem. Always worrying, complaining, getting emotional, getting frustrated, getting angry, getting resentful, getting bitter, getting angry, getting stressed to do with the self is the problem. Now, basically for millions, hundreds, thousands of people around the world within our civilization at the moment, they don't understand that the self is the problem. They don't understand that when you live the self in all of your life, you're going to basically create pain, you're going to create suffering, you're going to create adversities, you're going to create sin, and you're going to just basically live a life that is constantly to do with yourself, which is just not a good way to live. So something needs to change, and something needs to transcend the self to the no self and selflessness. So the question that we have to ask ourselves in this audio, in this podcast, is how do we do that? How do we change the self to the no self and selflessness? How do we really do that? Because if millions, thousands, hundreds of people are always going to live for the self, and this is something where it's very difficult to change that. It's very hard to change that because, like, a lot of people will always live for the self without consciously thinking about it, without realizing that they are. So when life challenges and life problems and situations come into their life, it's because they've been living for the self, worried about the self, basically complaining about the self, getting emotional about the self, getting frustrated about the self, getting resentful, angry, bitter, and just the challenges of life, all to do with the self. So the self is what the problem is. Now, for a lot of people who discover something that's beyond the self, I'm not going to say, like, when I say something that's beyond the self, like, how do you discover that? It's so easy to discover. This becomes the most difficult thing to discover because the world that we're living in, our civilization at the moment, is based on selfish people. It's based on people pursuing money, possessions, houses, cars, success, prosperity, riches, accomplishments, achievements, based on the self. So it's always focused on themselves. When like you look at social media, or you look on the news, or you look on TV, or anywhere where you just see how life is for people, right? You see most of the things that people post or share, or the videos they create, or the way they live their life, is all focused on themselves. It's like a selfish, egotistical way of living, which is very, very difficult to basically change that and to overcome that. So the question is, how do we overcome the self? What do we need to do that? What do we need to do to basically not think about ourselves, our worries, our blaming, our concerns, our suffering, our pain and adversity, our frustrations, our bitterness, our resentment, our anger, our pain, our suffering, our emotions, our feelings. So how do we change all of that? What do you do? What's the best way to change that? So I've always said, within my books, within my videos, and within my podcast and with my content, there is a way of overcoming the self, and there is a way of overcoming suffering, pain, and adversity. But only a few people find it in life, and it's very hard to find in life. So what do we need to do to overcome the self? What do we need to do to basically do that? We need to do the 5 spiritual practices: prayer, meditation, mindfulness, walking, and journaling. So the 5 spiritual practices is how you go through a spiritual change. So what is a spiritual change? A spiritual change is when you change your psyche and your psychological mind. If you change your psyche and your psychological mind, then you've gone through a spiritual change, which, like I said, kind of in the message already, we don't see this in the world today. We don't see society that has gone through a spiritual change and that has basically overcome the self, the ego, the I, me, my mentality, which is very, very, it's very destructive. That is, it's very, very negative when you live like that. So when you do the 5 spiritual practices: prayer, meditation, mindfulness, walking, and journaling, you're slow. It's like a gradual way of doing it. It's not like a fast. It's just going to happen overnight and then I'm going to slowly change my life. It takes time. It takes a bit of patience, a bit of empathy, a bit of compassion, a bit of understanding, and a bit of time to really change yourself. But Normally, it's the 5 spiritual practices that will make you change: prayer, meditation, mindfulness, walking, and journaling. If you do the 5 spiritual practices, which I've always said to anyone that watches my videos, my contents, my videos, anyone that listens to what I share and what I produce and create, that's what's going to make you spiritually change. And then when you spiritually change, your psyche and your psychological mind changes. So I've always said this is like the change that we need to go through in life and in humanity. Right now at the moment, a lot of people they're not prepared to go through that change because they're living for the self, the ego, the self-esteem, me, my. So for about millions, hundreds and thousands of people, they will never discover something new and something more creative. So when we change our psyche and our psychological mind, we're actually changing ourselves as a human being. This change changes all parts of our life. So we become more spiritual, faithful, truthful, have more knowledge, have more wisdom, have more understanding, have more clarity, find our spiritual life purpose, our spiritual calling, able to do things in life that are very, very, unique, and that basically does the next thing, which is helping other people, helping the animals, and helping the universe. So it's so important to go through a spiritual change. And like I said before, when you go through a spiritual change within the psyche and the psychological mind, that is what makes you help other people, help the animals, help the universe. But the question that we have to ask ourselves in the audio and podcast is, how do we help other people? What is the way to help other people? And what I've been sharing in my videos, my content, and my videos, and my podcasts, my audios, is the 5 levels of helping other people. So there's 5 levels of helping other people that we all need to discover in life if we want to help other people, give back, help humanity, help the animals, help the universe. So what are the 5 levels of helping other people? Level 1, volunteering. The good level in helping other people. Level 2, jobs, careers, employment. The great level in helping other people. Level 3, business, entrepreneurship. The highest level in helping other people. Level 4, faith and spiritual. The spiritual levels in helping other people. And then level 5, spiritually helping other people who helping other people. The teaching level in helping other people. Now, these are the 5 levels in helping other people in life. There's actually 5 levels to actually do. So if we want to, I'm not going to say this in a rude way, but if we want to resolve the self, because like I said in the audio, the self is the problem in life. If we want to resolve it, get past it, transcend it, overcome it, find our spiritual life purpose and spiritual calling, then we need to go through a spiritual change within the psyche and the psychological mind. When we go for a spiritual change within the psyche and the psychological mind, then we basically need to do the 5 levels of helping other people, and then helping humanity, helping the animals, helping the universe. So this is all like a process. It's all like a journey. So the journey starts when we spiritually change, and when we spiritually change, what happens when we spiritually change is that we have no more self within us. So what do I mean by no more self within us? We don't have a self. We're more faithful, spiritual, truthful, and that means there's no more self. We don't have the concerns of what other people have. We're not frustrated. We're not angry. We're not resentful. We're not going through life challenges and difficulties as other people are. We're not moaning or complaining or whinging. We're not basically depressed, sad, unhappy, and we're not going through suffering, pain, and adversity anymore. So that's what it means to overcome the self. That's what it means to overcome me, my. So it's important that we learn that the spiritual change is what changes everything else. So you have to go through a spiritual change to change the psyche and the psychological mind. If you don't go through a spiritual change to change the psyche and the psychological mind, it basically means you always live for the self. And if you always live for the self, it basically means that's a selfish life you're living. So in reality and in life, everyone needs to go through a spiritual change. And I've always said within my podcast, my audio, and my books, this ain't an easy journey to do. It's the hardest, it's the most challenging, it's the most difficult. It takes the most time to actually find it out for yourself. But if you do want to go on the journey, and I encourage the listeners to go on the journey, you will see that the no self and selflessness becomes the most important thing. What is no self and selflessness? No self and selflessness basically means you know yourself, the no self. You're selfless enough to take actions towards helping other people, helping humanity, helping the animals, helping the universe. So you have no more self. You're free. You're spiritually liberated and spiritually awakened. This comes to the topic of spiritual enlightenment. So everything starts with a journey, basically. It starts with going through a spiritual change first. So if we want to overcome the self, which I'm calling in this audio and podcast, is the problem. The self is the problem in life. It's the biggest problem in life, and that's why millions, hundreds, thousands of people are not living a spiritual life purpose and a spiritual calling, because they're focused on themselves without consciously realizing they're focused on themselves. So to change all that, to overcome all that, to transcend all that, we need to go through a spiritual change, and that's when the psyche and the psychological mind needs to change. That changes your whole life once you've experienced that. If you get the opportunities to help other people, help humanity, help the animals, help the universe, once you've gone through a spiritual change, that becomes very important. But you have to change. You have to experience change. You have to go through a change within your life. Now, we can't somehow basically stop all the selfish behavior within the world. We can't stop it because Jesus Christ, Jehovah, and Buddha is trying to help us to spiritually change, which they always are. But we can't necessarily stop the selfish behavior of what human beings are living, because they're choosing not to change. They're choosing not to go through the journey. They're choosing not to help other people, help humanity, help the animals, help the universe. So we can't specifically stop all the selfish behavior. But it comes to a thing like this when we realize, if we can't stop all the selfish behavior because the self is the problem, then what can we do for ourselves? We can spiritually change ourselves, help other people, give back, help humanity, help the animals, and help the universe. So this always becomes something that you will need to change within yourself. This becomes difficult, like I've said. It's not an easy thing to discover in life. It's a very difficult thing to discover. But once you change yourself, then you change your reality. Once you change your reality, then you change your life. There's normally a saying that I say, spiritually change your thinking, spiritually change your life. So if you spiritually change your thinking, which is what I'm saying in the audio, the psyche and the psychological mind, that has to change first before you get the opportunities to help other people, help humanity, help the animals, and help the universe. So deep down in all of, the civilization of selfish people and the civilization of money, house, car, relationships, friends, income, food, drinks, romance, stuff, things within your life, you will need to go through a spiritual change before you can help other people in what they are going through. And the truth of this audio is Jehovah, Jesus Christ, and Buddha wants us to go for a spiritual change. They actually want us to go for a spiritual change, because without the spiritual change, we can't help other people in what they're going through. We can't support people with what they need help with. We can't give back or make a difference. So the reality is, the self will always be the problem in life, because millions, billions, thousands, hundreds of people are living for the self. We may not be able to change all of those people's lives, because they're going to continue to do that within their lives. We may not be able to do that, but the journey of the work of helping other people starts when you've gone through a spiritual change. Starts when you've changed your psyche and your psychological mind. Starts when you go on the journey of spiritual transformation from yourself. And the word I'm going to use is the self to the no self and selflessness. That is the journey of life. That is the journey of helping others, and that is the journey of helping humanity, helping the animals, helping the universe. When you've changed yourself, when you've changed your thinking, when you've changed your life, when you've changed all aspects of your life through going through a spiritual change, which is the 5 spiritual practices: prayer, meditation, mindfulness, walking, and journaling. So I hope this has helped. I know it's quite an in-depth topic to talk about. The self is the problem. But realize this, that there's going to be billions, millions, thousands, hundreds of people that will still live for the self. You may not be able to change all those people. You may not be able to do that. But what you can do is change yourself. Change yourself, you change your life. Change your life, you change your reality. Change your reality, you change all aspects of your life. So spiritually changing your thinking, spiritually changing your life. That's the psyche and the psychological mind that needs to change. Okay, thank you for listening now. I hope this has helped. Bye now. Thanks.